AC, I couldn't believe it. On our escape from Hammerland, like idiots, we stopped. We were being chased out of town, and yet we still found it in our hearts to pull over and pick up a hitchhiker. A familiar face, though, one we've seen on our journey before, Mr. Bill Gudmundson.
Oh,
Bill, how you doing?
I'm fine. I'm very good, thank you.
Thanks for joining in on this one. I was excited to hear you were going to make it.
Oh, well, I'm no expert on Hammer films. I like Hammer films quite a bit, but I'm much more of a fan of Nigel Kneale, which is
Yes.
what attracted me to search this movie out a few years ago.
Well, and you were on the Quatermass 2, which was also written by Nigel Kneale and also directed by Val Guest. So this is right in your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And we are talking about the Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas, which has been popularly just shortened to the Abominable Snowman, easy for me to say, from 1957. This is one of the oldest Hammer films that we have discussed, and it is quite a fascination. Bill, I watched it with you last week, and I must confess, I was in and out for more of it than I care to admit. But I have gone back and rewatched it. Yes, as I was sitting across the room from you, I was kind of like nodding off because I was very tired. It had been a very long day. So I got the movie. I picked up on everything that happened, but I mostly wanted to go back because I feel like I'd missed some dialogue scenes. Yeah, this is a wild movie, and it's one of those pictures that, you know, especially as a modern movie viewer, used to watching blockbusters that spend ungodly amounts of money on, you know, either real locations or CGI effects to make something look real, or God forbid, the volume. To see what they could do in 1957 to create a sense of time and place of this expedition to the Himalayas. And I don't know what this looks like on a giant screen, but I know on a big television and certainly a laptop monitor, it looks very realistic. So AC, I'm going to rely on you, I think, a bit for the background in this, as I usually do. Did they actually trek to the Himalayas to film this damn movie, or was this all on sound stages, or both?
I had the same reaction. I hadn't seen this one in quite a while. So as I was watching, I was like, wow, like those are clearly some people out in a massive field of snow. In doing my research, I looked at Marcus Hearn's book, The Hammer Story, and it sounds like they shot in the French Pyrenees.
Yes.
Guest and his cast of body doubles, just so they could do those aerial shots and not have to pay Peter Cushing to be trekking across the mountainside. And then they did a lot of the bigger sets at Pinewood, and then the smaller sets were at Bray. So this is a big kind of a big production, you know, considering they had the success of the two Quatermass films and X the Unknown. But Curse of Frankenstein had just come out in May. This came out in August. So Peter Cushing was suddenly a big name. And so that definitely helped soften the budget in terms of like people actually going to see it.
Well, and this is a you know, sort of a unique role for Cushing, in him playing a tragic yet heroic figure. I mean, certainly he is the polar opposite of his Dr. Frankenstein character. Not in terms of the curiosity, though. No. Because, you know, he plays a botanist who is up in the Himalayas with his wife. I think they were married.
His wife, Helen.
Yeah. So he plays Dr. Rollason. And Helen Rollason is played by Maureen Connell, and they're up on this expedition. They get kind of sidetracked when another expedition joins the camp, led by Mr. Tom Friend, aka Forrest Tucker, the actor who played him, going to look for the elusive abominable snowman, aka the Yeti, which I'm going to refer to
it. The Yeti, it's easier.
It is. It really is. So they're looking for the Yeti, and Rollason decides to go along with them because he's also very curious. And Helen stays behind in the camp with the locals and the other member of their three-person expedition, while the guys go out and look for this monster. And there's all sorts of disasters and accidents and eerie portents from the llama who's in the camp, or not the camp, but basically I guess, the village that they're staying at.
Mm.
Now, it's fascinating because you see a lot of these themes come up in later, I'll call it, science fiction horror, particularly about corporate greed and man's hunt for the unknown, for reasons that go far beyond just mere curiosity, like, hey, what is out there in the world or the universe? Coming back to how can we exploit it? And, I have not seen as many 1950s monster movies as I probably should have. I'm certainly seeing a lot more through this series and with my guests. But I was struck by how much this reminded me of movies like Alien and The Thing, where it comes down to, hey, there's something out there. We're going to explore, try and hunt it and or catch it, but also to exploit it, and how that doesn't tend to work out well for the humans, along with a very chilling ending. I've got the spoiler banner down below. We'll probably get to that, but I just want people to be aware. If you haven't seen this movie, definitely seek it out. But let's start with the kind of not only the impressions, but when we encountered this movie. For me, it was at Bill's house a week ago. So, Bill, you said that you had been looking up Nigel Kneale's work, and you saw this film. You liked it enough to buy the Blu-ray. So, what was your first encounter with the Abominable Snowman, aka the Yeti of the Himalayas?
Actually, it was when I was a little kid, when I was 10 or 12 or something. It was on, I believe, one of these afternoon 3:30 movies, where they would take like a regular length movie and cut it down. It would be in a 90-minute time slot and probably cut down to 70 minutes or something. And at that time, it's like any monster movie, anything that had like, something potentially scary, I was going to watch it. And my memory of watching that was being kind of disappointed, because I didn't know what was going on. And, it is a talky movie. There's a lot of conversations, and 12-year-olds, well, at least me as a 12-year-old, didn't really pick up on any of that stuff. It's like, I want to see the monster. And when we finally see the monster, well, I was actually watching it like this, because those things started walking forward, and I didn't want to see the thing's face. And I caught a glimpse of it, and I was like, was that like an old man or something? And then it was over. And then later, and I had never heard of Nigel Kneale. I think probably that might have been like the first thing by Nigel Kneale that I saw, because sometime later I saw the 20 Million Miles to Earth, aka Quatermass on the Pit, and that one just blew me away. I was a little older, and it was one of those things like, every 5 minutes, like the plot would like turn 90 degrees or 180 degrees, and I was just like fascinated by that. So when I found out that this thing was done by Nigel Kneale, I borrowed it from a friend a few years ago, and ended up really liking it much more than I thought I would. And then, I don't know, on eBay or something, I saw that there was a fairly recently put out deep Blu-ray by Shout Factory, and watched that again and again then with you in the last like 6 months. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, I guess.
It's very convincing. Yes. AC.
Similar to Bill, this is one that I came to wanting to see the monster, looking for a 50s monster movie. And for a 50s monster movie, this is not heavy on monster at all. And I agree. I think it's a little disappointing for a monster kid, because what you get at the end is not the great reveal you've been waiting for. They do a great job of kind of stringing you along. You got the claw kind of hanging into frame, and you see the shadows of them. So it's like, in terms of buildup, I think it's exciting. But yeah, I agree. And it lands better as an adult. If you're looking for the big reveal of the monster face, you're not going to get that. But what you do get, again, as an adult, you're like, oh, wow, what a cerebral concept that is. That, no, this isn't even like the missing link between man and this other beast. it's something completely different and something that will perhaps inherit the world after we've killed each other off. So yeah, like it all landed in a much different way for me as an older viewer. But I think I watched it, dismissed it. It wasn't like a Harryhausen movie. And so I didn't come back around to it till much later when I was doing a Hammer deep dive. And I said, you know what, let me go back and watch this boring movie again. And I agree, like having just watched Curse of Frankenstein was just released on 4K from the actual Hammer label. And I've spent a lot of time watching that over the past couple weeks. And so to see this movie alongside that movie, it's like, wow, you really do get to appreciate Cushing's range, but also just the notion of like, this is really Hammer starting to take off. You know, you've got the two Quatermass movies, you got X the Unknown, and then you have Curse of Frankenstein, which just kind of explodes them onto the scene. And then this is kind of one that just doesn't get the same love as Curse of Frankenstein, you know, and I can see why, but you would think that Kneale's name would carry a little more weight and that it would get revisited and reappraised more often than I think it does. I'm really glad that we picked this one. I think it was you, Bill, who suggested it, because we were, you know, running down toward the finish line and we're like, can we sneak one more in? I'm really glad we came back and watched this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am too. And it occurs to me that it's a monster movie, but I think all of the deaths in this film, the human deaths, are not caused by the monster, right?
Not directly.
Yeah.
Right. We have it's mostly due to human hubris and folly. I mean, we've got an avalanche that takes out a character. We've got there's the avalanche. There's a guy gets his leg caught in a bear trap. Another guy sees the Yeti and then runs like kind of screaming down back towards the village. That isn't necessarily a death, but it's the way that in a traditional monster movie, the people who go out on the expedition are one by one kind of picked off by the creature. And in this situation, which kind of presages a lot of the things we're talking about, where it is the monster doing the killing, they are the victims of their own ambition and of themselves. Issues of like, well, there's a rifle I can use to fend off the Yeti, but unfortunately it's filled with blanks, and all these other great little kind of contrivances that add up to kind of like the idea of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre later on. Everyone remembers Tobe Hooper's movie as being, extremely violent and graphic and bloody, but it's not. It's disturbing, but it's not the movie that you quite remember.
Yeah, and there aren't. I mean, I agree. There are a lot of deaths, but they aren't. Nothing is. Well, there's the one where the guy kind of falls off the cliff.
Yeah,
that one's pretty graphic. If you see a dummy falling to a snowy patch graphic, but I was like, wow, that his arms and legs are all weight. I was like, that must have hurt. But yeah, going back really quick, I love how you're kind of parlaying this body count into what we would find like in the later 70s and 80s movies, because the exploitation aspect of it that you were referencing earlier, that actually, I think, goes back to kind of our jungle movies where they would be going on safari and looking for these exotic animals that they could bring back and exploit. The same thing is true. The fact that it's kind of a humanoid / monster puts it in a different vein, but it really is just a safari movie.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference though? And again, I'm not as well versed as my colleagues here on the panel. There is at least the pretense of our Mr. Friend, who I love that as a reveal. Again, we're talking spoilers here. His name is Friend, which just seems like, oh, that's a fake name, but he uses it throughout the entire movie. So like, well, there are actual people in the world walking around with the last name Friend, so maybe it is. But then during a rather heated conversation, I can't remember Cushing's name, Rollason. I keep wanting to call him Rollins, but Dr. Rollason is talking about where our friend might have shown up on other expeditions under similar circumstances to the one that he finds himself in now. And it's like, yeah, I don't believe that's actually your name. And he's like, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm who I am. But initially Friend is talking about, he's not just going out trying to find this thing for commercial purposes. It's all about like exploring, trying to help humanity figure out, learn more about the world. And hey, if we put that on television, that's great. I'm not just looking to put this thing on someone's wall. I'm in it for purely kind of humanitarian reasons, and maybe if I happen to make some money, that's great. But then as it goes along, it turns out, it is purely greed that he's after.
Yeah. I feel like that's the story he's selling, so that he doesn't seem like just a guy who's trying to, rape and pillage and, bring stuff home. But
that's sort of the subtle distinction I'm trying to bring to the idea of the safari, which is like, we're going out, we don't know what we're looking for, but there's this legend and we want to bring back its head. Like trophy.
Well, but I would say that yes, and like a lot of the safari films, they're trying to capture it as well, because they could get more money if they can bring it to a zoo, or if they can bring, present it live.
Going back to King Kong, sure, yeah,
exactly. So it's like, if we're talking about a safari movie, I mean, which is basically what this is, it's the location that makes it really different. We're not in some sweaty jungle. We're out in, the snowy landscape. And I think that sense of isolation, there's something about, being in a jungle where you have the life all around you. You're hearing all the noises. Something about being in the isolation of the Himalayas, where there's nothing around. There's nobody around, and nobody will find you if you, wait there 10 minutes and get covered by a snowbank. It's just kind of unforgiving, that landscape.
Isolation in movies and books and things has always been one of my favorite, and actually something that really kind of creeps me out. I mean, you've got The Shining. For me, like, one of the first things was a story by Algernon Blackwood called The Wendigo. Oh, sure. It takes place in the Canadian forests, and that terrified me when I read it when I was 12 or something. And it still works for me. And that idea that exactly that, like you can call for help, you can scream, but no, you're just on your own, and the elements are not nice. You're not in a good way with whatever's outside.
And that's sort of part of the setup for this expedition, because Rollason is talking to Friend initially. It's like, well, it's, to your point, Bill, it's unforgiving terrain. They don't know exactly where they're going. They're up in the mountains, and what are they going to do about supplies? And Friend says, oh, well, we've set up these little posts, last season before things got really bad. So we're going to have food and different ways to replenish ourselves. So they know that they're going into treacherous territory. Bill, I just want to pull over for a second, as we did before we picked you up for this trip on our way out of town. I'm going to drive this into the ground. Are you excited about the recent announcement that John Carpenter is in talks to direct a sequel to The Thing?
No.
Okay, just wanted to get that out there. Me neither.
I don't know. I'm not that big of a Carpenter fan to begin with. It's like The Thing is, like, for me, the best. I mean, and that's also a really good example of people in isolation.
Yep.
That's like the only really great film of his that I've seen. Other ones I've been, The Fog, it was okay. I didn't really like Halloween. And I saw Halloween only about 5 years ago or something, and just found it kind of, whatever. But
it's not as good as Friday the 13th. I got my reference in. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't really have the faith in Carpenter to, like, turn this around, and where are you going to go from here? Like, oh, somebody's going to get back to civilization, and then it's just going to be hours of CGI goop.
It is a perfect movie as it is, and I would really rather I didn't mind the prequel too much, but I didn't like it I didn't like it either.
Yeah, that's my impression.
But I love Carpenter, and I like tying it back to this. Like, there is something about just being out there, and nobody's going to help you. You are out there with the monster, and that's it.
There's what was the name of the assistant? Is it Foxy,
Yeah, Foxy.
Yeah.
who was he was the kind of the third person, hanging out with the Rollisons on their, I guess, initial trip, and he stays behind with Helen in the camp. And at the end of the film, they actually go out as a kind of a rescue party, and I thought that was kind of interesting because she's sort of told to stay behind at the camp. She's not for her husband going out with a friend and his kind of goons, but she kind of saddles up and goes out to save her husband, and she does, which, again, not being as versed in these things, I thought that was kind of a bold and unexpected move to have her be part of the rescue team instead of just like, oh, don't worry, dear, you stay here.
Right.
There's been a long line of that in this movie already. Like, no, you stay here, stay warm and safe. She's like, no, and she finds her husband and helps get him back to camp.
I didn't know this before, but in watching on the Blu-ray, there's a looking for the Yeti feature in which a film historian is explaining stuff, and I didn't realize that this was originally a TV production called The Creature that had Peter Cushing in it, and I think a couple of the other actors that were in the film were also in this. And there was no woman in the TV version, and Kneale wrote one in, and I think it was a really good idea. For a lot of reasons. I mean, not just that, like, okay, we're tired of seeing all these dudes, but also that, like, she plays a really important role in it, and she's not just as the guy said, somebody that makes the coffee for everybody.
And I think also, like, it allows us to see the flaws in Cushing's character, because we see that he's not just a white knight, with all the, like, he's been hiding things from his wife, and I think showing that side of him, that yes, he's a dedicated husband, he's a good man, we can tell all that, but he's also somebody who is driven. You referenced Frankenstein, he is driven to do this, and he will keep things from his wife in order, because he knows it's going to upset her, and he's like, well, let me just see if it's going to pan out. But that's the lie of omission, and I love that we get to see that part of him as well.
So you're saying if Victor Frankenstein had a Helen, could have avoided a whole lot of trouble.
Yeah. I mean, he had a pretty good Elizabeth in Hazel Court, and he still blew it. So
that's true. It's true. I want to jump forward and talk about that ending, because I need y'all's help, because it seemed okay. I guess the Yeti have psychic powers. Is that what I
do?
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's what's implied. I like that nothing is ever really
right.
It's like, these are just ideas that the doctor has, and you see, like, what might be happening with the llama, and, like, he's in this trance at one point, and it's like, is he in contact? And he can tell when people are coming and going, and it's like, well, is it the Yeti that's he's in contact with? Maybe, but I like that ambiguity, where it isn't like somehow just like they strap the thing down to a table and read to the electromagnetic waves from its brain scan or something.
Right. Yeah, I like the fact that we hear the voices in their head, and you go, like, how is that happening? We can assume it's the Yeti, but it's not. It's not explained. They could just be losing their minds. I love that. Like, you hear it, the audience hears it, but then you see the other character doesn't hear it. It's like, there's some really fun things there. And yes, I think where you're going with this, Ian, is like the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So ask your question.
Well, because my question is, do the Yeti have psychic powers, or is it the llama who is messing with our explorers to protect the Yeti, who perhaps, not to say they're not intelligent, but perhaps they're not psychic? Because I'm kind of fine either way. Is he kind of planting these voices and these problems in the mind of our explorers in order to kind of drive them around in circles and eventually defeat themselves? Or is it the Yeti that are doing that, and our llama just understands what's going on up in that mountain, and he's like, well, I'll do what I can, but
Right.
I didn't. I never thought of it from that angle. I always assumed it was the Yeti that were better at this psychic stuff.
Pulling the strings, yeah.
And they can at least communicate. Well, that's sort of my other point to that. Why it would make more sense to be the llama is, does that imply that they can speak? They can speak English. They can get into the heads of the people that they are communicating with. If they were, from different countries, would they hear the voice, the language that they recognize, that kind of thing?
Well, I see my thing with that, and I you see that show up in other movies, and you're like, well, do they speak English or not? I think if you plant the idea, it's kind of like a dream, right? You drop the idea into somebody's brain, they're going to hear the concept. It's not necessarily words that they're hearing. What they're hearing is the concept of somebody crying for help. Okay, well, that sounds like X, Y, and Z. My question is, do we think that Cushing is lying at the end, talking about like there is nothing out there, or has the Yeti wiped his brain clean so that he actually has no recollection of his encounter? I wonder if that also happened with the llama. Like, because the llama is completely convinced that there's, he seems very convincing when he's talking about there's nothing out there.
Well, and the way that I read that, and this is what I love about these ambiguous endings, because they all can work, and yet none of them feel like shortcuts. Like the screenwriter is like, oh, it's whatever you want it to be.
Right.
I think there's a difference between that and an ending that definitely does invite interpretation. The way I read it was, whether it's looking at the scene, I feel like the llama has kind of hypnotized our Rollason character to believe that he hasn't encountered anything. Like, he's going to get a good night's sleep and wake up and be like, well, we didn't find the flowers we were looking for. Let's head back home.
Right.
Hey, I've heard there's a Yeti in this part. Does anyone know anything about that? And then the llama and everyone's going to be like,
Yeah.
I don't believe that Rollason is lying, because just maybe this is a fault. If he is, it's a fault of Cushing, because Cushing in that moment looks like he's under a spell, not like hopelessly drooling or not like sad that he's been defeated or something, but genuinely like he's kind of mystified. Like, yeah, I never found what I was looking for. That's my interpretation. And as far as the llama, yeah, I think he's in control of that situation, which is one of the reasons that I invited that idea of maybe he's the one who's pulling all the strings to protect the Yeti. It's not like they're controlling him to control Rollason. I think he might just be, have those abilities.
I like when Helen finds Cushing, basically just kind of out in the wilderness, and he's just kind of like stock frozen. That's where I feel like the Yeti has done something to him. That
left them out there to freeze. Yeah, I agree.
Well, certainly that too. But I think the Yeti wiped Cushing's mind and sent him to where he could be found. That I feel like the Yeti's intention was that Cushing would be found, that he recognized that, this was a good soul, didn't intend harm, and so therefore made it possible for him to be saved, as opposed to tearing up the one guy, sending an avalanche into the other guy, things like that.
Yeah, that was kind of a big reveal to me, the fact that Rollason is alive at the end of it, because the camera kind of it goes into the llama's private quarters, and we see him, and then we see Helen, and it keeps panning over, and there's Rollason. Because when we saw him a second ago, he was up on the mountain and he was frozen. I mean,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
it looked almost like what they did with Nicholson at the end of The Shining.
Yep.
His face was, I mean, I know this is a black and white movie, but I saw this like in full colors, almost like this frozen slime or some kind of a death mask over him. So to see that he was still alive, I'm like, wait, is this somebody's dream, or did they dream the entire exposition? Did they even go up into those mountains?
I think that's Phil Leakey who did that snow ice mask. Phil Leakey being our makeup guy, who also did the creature design for this movie and for Curse of Frankenstein before Roy Ashton took the lead.
it almost seems like one of those, but it was just a dream, almost like a Final Destination thing, where he dies in the version where he goes up onto the mountain with Friend and everybody, and we see him dead in that icy death mask, and then he kind of like pops awake, and he's like, well, that's what's going to happen if I do this.
Right.
That's not the reality that the movie sets up. It reminds me of those kinds of stories, and it I think feeds into this delicious ambiguity at the end.
Bill, what's your theory on the Yeti's psychic powers?
Well, I actually kind of just took it at face value that the Yeti were the ones that had the actual power. The llama was channeling into it, and that at the end Peter Cushing was lying and saying,
"Do you think he was lying
to protect?" Because he realized that this needs protecting, and I'm not going to go out into the world and like share my experiences.
I agree.
Whether the llama was lying when Friend brings that claw to him.
Yeah.
Because he's like pretty glib about it. Like, oh, thanks for bringing back this carved, made up relic. And, and I'm pretty sure that the writer thought that was, that was a real thing that had been like held at this monastery for, 1,000 years or something.
I wish that we'd gotten to see the Yeti. Like, I wanted to see a face where the Yeti has those big teeth in. I mean, we only get to look at the eyes. I'm like, come on, would it killed you to show me a tooth?
Yeah, maybe. Well, I've never seen any like really behind the scenes photographs from this film.
No, me neither.
And I mean, I'm sure they didn't just like stop the makeup here and then it's just like some guy's face.
I don't know. This is Hammer we're talking about.
But,
well, Bill, this reminds me, when we were talking at your place last week, you mentioned I don't remember the name of it. You'll know it. There's a magazine that's going to be covering this film in its next issue. Isn't that right?
Oh yeah. Well, you're familiar with Little Shop of Horrors, right?
Oh yeah, Richard Clemenson. Yeah.
Yeah. I just got the latest issue on Gorgo, which is hardly an issue. It's a 300-page book.
Wow.
That you could kill someone with. And the next issue, which is the last issue, is going to have a feature on this. So yeah, maybe we'll see something there because this guy has access to everything, it seems.
Oh yeah, yeah. Richard Clemenson shows up on a lot of these Hammer documentaries because he is one of the foremost authorities, at least certainly in America, on Hammer films.
Yeah. And if you go to the Little Shop of Horrors website, all issues, even although most of them are reprints at this point, are available for about $17 a piece. So I've been catching up. I got the Dr. Fives one the other day, and a few other favorites in there. I actually have, I think, from like 74 or something.
Wow.
Issue number 3, mainly because it had a thing about Godzilla movies in it.
Well,
for the viewers, whoever you may be, I'd really recommend looking into Little Shop of Horrors, the magazine. It's been going on for 53 years or so now, since 1972. And if you want to like really know how a movie was made in the tiniest detail, that's the place to go.
Yeah, especially Hammer fans. If you are fans of this show, this series, that would be your next stop is Little Shop of Horrors, because and it's done all from just great fandom. Like these are people who just were so passionate. Richard was tracking people down, that nobody else had talked to. His interview with Arthur Grant, who's our cinematographer here as well. But nobody had talked to Arthur Grant before. And Arthur Grant said, yeah, okay, fine. Because Richard just kept hammering him with emails and requests. Like, can we just talk one time? Can we just talk? And so Arthur's like, finally, I'll finally talk to you. But yeah, he's just great. Like, I love what Dick's done for the fans.
Yeah.
Well, and I assume there's Little Shop of Horrors has a website for the magazine, so I'll include that down below so people can check it out. I definitely know I will. But just going back to the idea of, what happened in that. As far as Rollason, I
Mhm.
don't know. Is he? I feel like he's the kind of guy, from what we know of him, especially what he went through and experienced with these creatures, that he's not going to be like what Friend would do with that information and go back and tell the world.
Right.
I don't know that he would need to lie. He could just say, "Look, I've seen some things here. I respect what's going on. I'm studying plants and stuff, so this isn't really my bag anyway. Helen, we're not saying anything. We came, we
Well,
saw, we
I mean,
left."
the llama knew that they had been encountered, had encountered the Yeti, and
Mhm.
so it almost seems like if he knew that, and he knew that he probably knows that the guy's brain was wiped, that there'd be no reason for even making that question.
Right.
But
I guess,
I mean,
but
if
is
you
there a
go that
threat that
far,
do you
it's
think?
like the
Do you,
Yeti could just completely. The expedition could never find the Yeti because every time they encountered or heard or saw something, they could have their brains wiped.
Right.
So that's how I see it.
well, I
Maybe
mean,
it'll be answered in the new Little Shop of Horrors.
could be. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if he hadn't said that, said what he said, do you think the llama, and I know they're peaceful people, allegedly, do you think Rollason and Helen would have made it off that mountain alive?
Mm.
Or is there some kind of a compact where, like, yeah, I'm going to say what I need to say here because there's a chance that I might not wake up tomorrow to go back home?
There's something about I was talking about this last night with my wife. There's a kindness actually to not having the memory, because then you don't have to carry it. You don't have to carry this knowledge of this amazing thing that only you experienced, and you can't share it with anyone. In some ways, it's a kindness to not have that burden. And that's how I saw it. I was like, oh, that's actually that way. I don't have to lie. I don't actually know anymore.
Well, but I guess that gets back to, I mean, we're talking philosophy now, sort of. He wouldn't necessarily have to lie, right? Because who's going to ask him if he found the Yeti?
No. But having experienced something like that, wouldn't you
Mhm.
want to share it with somebody?
Possibly. I mean, there's the joy of an experience that you want to tell people about, but for whatever reason you can't. There's also trauma. I mean, people come back from war and they're like, I never want to talk about that
Sure,
again.
of course.
But also the positive part about that being something that I'm sure informed and or enriched who he is as a person, that it's almost sort of a crime to take that away from him. Like
Sure.
I'm sure he learned a lot about that, not just in terms of these mythical creatures that actually exist, but what he went through on that expedition, what he learned about people, in terms of the folks that he was with, and kind of unraveling their deception. That's one of the, I guarantee that when Val Guest made this movie back in 1957, he had no idea that people would be talking about the ethics and philosophy of the last 5 minutes of his movie, 70 years hence. But here we are. And I think that's a testament to a film that can easily be dismissed as a not very exciting monster movie,
Right.
but is full of great ideas and observations about people. This is the kind of thing that gives birth to that cliche, people are the real monsters.
Well, and I think we see that, like, I mean, this, as far as a monster movie goes, this is a terrible monster movie, but we recognize that, and let's all just come right out and say it. The Americans are the
Yeah.
monsters in this movie. Like, Americans are just terrible. And I was like, yeah, I can own that. It seems like that's kind of what we do, is go and, I mean, the Brits are no princes either. The colonies of the Brits. I did want to
Well,
go back.
I want to pull over. AC, that is your opinion. I do not share that opinion.
Okay,
So,
fine.
yeah,
You don't think Americans are awful?
no.
Well,
Americans,
I think America.
okay. Leadership, potentially, yes, but Americans in general, no, I'm not going to go that far. There's way too
Okay.
many of us.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Friend is definitely a terrible person.
Yes.
Sure.
Also, what I understand is that in the TV version, they had a British actor playing him, or playing
Yes,
that
Stanley
part.
Baker.
And when they suggested, because I think back to the first two Quatermass films, Kneale and myself really hate Brian Dunlavey as Quatermass. And from what I understand, that when they suggested Forrest Tucker for this role in the film version, that Kneale was okay with that because, yeah, here's this the ugly American, the essentially, well, the villain of the piece in its own way.
Oh yeah.
So that I thought was kind of interesting. There were actually, to kind of go back to the whole ending thing. The reason I think this whole mind wiping thing seems a little off to me is because there's never any hint of it anywhere in the film. There's, the putting in visions and kind of thing, but there's never anything like, oh, I forgot why we're up here. Let's go home. Which would have been a quicker way to get the people off the mountain. So, but I won't argue it anymore.
No. I agree. It would be, if the Yeti had that power, why wouldn't he just like have his force field out there, 50 miles to wherever, to make sure that anybody who walks up there goes, Yeti, what? Or actually, why are we even here? Let's just go home.
It's probably very tiring. I mean, to keep up a psychic force field.
I do want to come back around to Val Guest though, because we've barely mentioned our director here, and he did direct the first two Quatermass movies, and he also directed the first two color Hammer films. I think everybody talks about Curse of Frankenstein being the first kind of Hammer color film, but that was just their first color horror film. He directed The Man of Sherwood Forest and Breaking the Circle. So those were the two big color breakouts for Hammer. And there is some talk that he would have directed Curse of Frankenstein rather than Terence Fisher, but he was busy doing another assignment. And so they gave the gig to Terence Fisher, and Terence Fisher kind of became the color gothic go-to guy. But it could have been Val Guest. And I love what Val Guest does as a director. We just recently talked about Hell's a City, which is a noir film that he did back in 1960 for Hammer. And that thing moves like a house on fire, like the overlapping dialogue, it just event after event after event. And you go, boy, what would Val Guest's Curse of Frankenstein look like? I mean, I love Terence Fisher's vision, but it really would have been interesting to see what Val Guest would have done with color, with Cushing, and all those resources available to him.
Well, fear not, AC, because with advents in AI, very soon you'll be able to just ask ChatGPT to make you a feature-length version of Hammer with whatever you want in it.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And then we hit Cyberdyne button and it's all over.
I like the fact that this film is in black and white. I can't imagine it in color at all. I love the sets that they make for the the areas around the camps and things. I mean, you can kind of tell, this isn't real, but they have a feeling to them that really works in the case of this. And I can't, these people in color.
Yeah, I agree. This one really works. The stark black and white, because, there's all this white and there's shadow. And that's pretty much what it's like in the Himalayas.
Yeah, it almost seems like a waste of a waste of color film to do it that way. But I mean, Bill, you're absolutely right there. I mean, I just thinking about this movie, I mean, I feel cold. I mean, you really do feel like you're out there as part of this expedition, and it's dark and miserable. I mean, there's very little daylight in this movie, I feel, if at all. It mostly takes place at the nighttime. But everything from like the avalanche to, again, the guy falling down the chasm. I mean, it's very effective, and I'll put it up against pretty much anything you could put out today. It doesn't feel cheesy or hokey or particularly set-like.
Well, and to go back to what Bill was talking about, I think this is a great sci-fi film. I don't think it's a great monster movie, but I think like those ideas that we're talking about, like the fact that we're debating about, the ending, I think that is the essence of great sci-fi. And I think that's where Nigel Neal's, understanding of cosmic, like what's terrifying to us is what we don't know and what we don't have control over. And I like how it does stimulate a different part of my brain than, the Harryhausen movies.
Well, look at the stone tape.
Oh my gosh.
That is great. Considered horror, but it's also science fiction. And I mean, we could also have a long debate about a lot of that stuff.
Well, I may ask you this. What if the only thing we saw the Yeti in the entire film was that hand and then like the shadows of the creatures that get, projected against the cave wall or something, not see the people in the suit at all? I think that would have been kind of interesting. It would have made it even less of a monster movie.
Right.
But, by the time we see them and the fact that there isn't like a giant climactic people rolling around, punching monsters scene, I feel like they could have gone more minimalist and it would have been perhaps even more effective.
If you do want that movie, by the way, you can watch Bill Rebane's The Capture of Bigfoot shot in Wisconsin, and you will get all the Yeti wrestling you ever dreamed of.
I don't dream of such things, but thanks for the recommendation.
It sounded like you were wishing right there.
No.
It's okay. You're in a safe space, Ian. You can tell us.
Yeah.
I never wished to see Yetis wrestling. I'm not just saying that because I'm under the spell of a monster. What?
You should read Max Brooks's book, De-Evolution.
Oh, really?
Max Brooks, World War Z magazine.
Yeah.
He had a novel a few years ago about essentially kind of a Bigfoot war or Bigfoot versus people, in which Mount Etna, one of the volcanoes that's theoretically still active, erupts and completely wipes out the wildlife and stuff in this area around this little kind of experimental town of techies. And the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, start coming down the mountain because all their food is out. And I really enjoyed the book. You were the one that mentioned, I think, got me into reading World War Z. So I'll be happy to throw Bigfoot at you.
There it is. I just put it on my wish list. There we go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because Bill, we saw Mr. Brooks presenting his zombie lecture back forever ago.
No, I was not there. But
were you not part of that?
You gave me an autographed copy of the book. Well, I might have.
Okay. Man, all right. For some reason I thought you were there because yeah, I remember Max Brooks was big in our circles back in the day. But yeah, for folks who haven't read it, World War Z, I can say, is one of my favorite books, and it is very little resemblance to the Brad Pitt movie. Does its own thing, but the book is 10 times the movie that the movie was. So I'll have to check out De-Evolution. All right. Well, this conversation is de-evolving.
Before we sign off, though, what accent is the llama using?
Vague Ferner. That's what I'll call it.
I was like, I don't know what this is. It's exotic for sure, but I was like, I could not place that to save my life.
I don't know.
That's all I wanted to say. Now we can sign off.
Yes, I will say yes. Authenticity to foreign cultures was not a strong suit in the 1950s monster movies.
No, but I still was kind of surprised that the Americans come in and this is all this shit, and the Peter Cushing though, I love the Foxy character when he's complaining about the food and the cold and all this stuff, and then the Americans come in and they start saying the same things, but Foxy then starts saying oh, I don't know, I kind of like it here. And then after they leave, a little later, he goes back to his real self. So it's in the presence of the Americans are worse than anything he has to say about Nepal or Tibet or wherever this is located. I guess it would be Nepal.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't
and
know.
I think he was. I also think he was a good character in general.
Agreed.
I don't know much about the actor. I think he might have been in. I think what I read was that he was in some comedies. It was a popular star in comedy films at the time. But I thought he worked really well.
Nice.
Well, and I'm sorry, one more. Sorry.
No, go for it.
Forrest Tucker appears in another snowbound monster movie that is a legit monster movie called The Crawling Eye, aka The Trollenberg Terror. That came out the following year, 1958. And all monster fans should go seek that out, because Forrest Tucker is in full, take charge American mode, but this time he's given an actual monster to deal with. And it lives up to its title because it's about a giant friggin' eyeball that is sentient and eats people.
I think there's several eyeballs. They're like a big eyeball with it's like an octopus with an eyeball for a head. And I thought there were several of them, and then they drop sparklers on them or something.
It's super fun. Check it out, folks.
It sounds like the precursor to that the highlight of Alien Earth. The only reason to watch
it is very similar to that, actually. I would just blow that thing up until it's like 80 feet wide, and you've got it.
Wow. All right. I love the recommendations.
I have a fondness for British science fiction films. They can be kind of sterile sometimes, but they all sort of had this like inner logic, or maybe not that, but there's just sort of this procedure that we're going through, and not all emotional about everything, and just like, well, we're going to take care of this, and stiff upper lip and everything, and
then you get Forrest Tucker in there to push people around. Forrest Tucker, by the way, best known for F Troop, which probably means nothing to our viewers today, but viewers of yesterday definitely knew what F Troop was.
Was that the prequel to F1, that Brad Pitt movie?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's your second Brad Pitt reference today.
In like 5 minutes. Yeah. I only had one Friday the 13th reference, now technically two. All right. Well, folks, we're going to leave it there. Definitely recommend checking out The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas, especially because I was just lucky enough to pronounce it correctly for possibly the first time this show.
Well done.
Thank you. But Bill.
As far as I know, the best thing to look at now is the Factory Blu-ray, and there's a little not warning exactly, but at the beginning of the film, they tell you that Hammer sent over this, I don't think it was a 4K, but a 2K master, and it was missing some scenes. And Shout Factory went back to, I think, a laser disc and kind of sharpened the images up and inserted them. And if you're looking, it's pretty obvious where like suddenly it starts to look a little like something on the TV. You can see some little lines and things, but the stuff that's in 2K is beautiful. And I appreciate that they wanted enough to make a full product like this and not like leave stuff out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I will leave a link to that as well down below, in addition to Little Shop of Horrors. So a bevy of things for people to check out after watching this conversation. So definitely appreciate all you hanging out. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We are also, as always, joined by Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and Bill Gudmundson of, Bill's Kitchen. Anything else you want to promote, Bill? Anything you got going on?
Oh, I should have something, really clever to say, but no, not at all.
Well, that's perfectly fine. I expect nothing less, sir. But I will say next month, yes, we've been doing this every other month this year, but this requires a special occasion, because in December, we're going to be doing the last Hammerland episode. As far as I know, we are finishing our escape from Hammerland. This is the end of a 5-year project. We haven't covered all the Hammer films, but we've certainly covered a lot of them. And we're going to be going out with the final Hammer film. Now, I know Hammer is having a bit of a resurgence of late, but we're talking about the OG Hammer. So the final Hammer film, To the Devil a Daughter. What year was this, AC?
1976, I believe. So we're coming up on an anniversary.
Excellent. So we'll be getting just ahead of the, wow, man, I can't, half a century.
That'll be 50, yeah, 50 years.
Now
The year
it's
before I was born.
time for Amicus Land, right?
Oh, I would do some Amicus.
We'll do those as a series of shorts. That way they can be amicus briefs.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. Anyhow, thank you everybody for hanging out and enjoying this episode of Escape from Hammerland. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications and all that business. Be sure and support AC via the links below. And Bill, well, I'll drop a link to Bill's Kitchen. I mean, that's still around, right?
Yeah, I haven't updated it in like 2 years,
but still
maybe this will be the impetus to do something.
Yeah, and showcase the lovely model and artwork that you've done over the years. So anyway, thanks everybody. If you, yeah, until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. Wait a second. Yes. Happy Thanksgiving. We can't let that go. This is going up the day before Thanksgiving, but you know, all the best warm hugs from us at Hammerland and Kicking the Seat to you and yours. It's not a knuckle biter, Bill. It's okay to be happy. Spread the love. I know. Hey everyone, Ian here. I know, long time no see. But if you like the video you just watched, feel free to subscribe to Kicking the Seat right here, and also check out the playlist and recommended video right here. Thanks for watching.